Hi, very good afternoon to all of you. Wish you and your family a very happy and healthy 2021. If I have to summarize last year, it reminds me of if we look at global economy, the global economic rebound has been almost V-shaped. It has taken everyone by surprise despite second wave of infection. This is possible mainly because, next slide please. This is possible mainly because central bankers have print money like crazy. They have been pumping liquidity like crazy. And G10 central bank's balance sheet is now crossing $25 trillion, which is roughly about 35 to 40% of global GDP. Obviously, when liquidity is high, equities go through the sky. And next slide, please. And interest rates come down dramatically. Today, world is sitting on $18 trillion of negative yielding debt. When interest rates are low, valuation of equity gets supported. What looked expensive at 10% yield suddenly becomes cheaper when the yield has fallen to 5%. This has resulted into global equities running up crazily. And today, MSCI World Index 12-month forward PE is trading in 20s. One fallout of COVID-19, big becoming bigger. The larger companies having access to capital, having access to consumers, have made more profit than the smaller companies. Well, coming to Indian economy, on the demand side, we are seeing V-shaped recovery in petrol consumption, in tractor sales, in automobiles, uh, in terms of railroad traffic congestion, digital payments, diesel consumption to some extent, it's been more like a U-shaped recovery. But by and large, recovery has been strong on the demand side. If we look at supply side, slowly and steadily, things have started improving across the sector. Particularly four sectors where we can look at: in automobile, December auto sales. Next slide, please. In automobile, December sales in auto sector, especially passenger vehicle, was one of the highest. And auto companies were facing supply constraint. They were not able to produce as much as consumers were demanding. Power consumption is at lifetime high level in India in the month of December at more than 185,000 megawatt. Freight loading is up 8.5% in December. And now year to date, we are 98% of previous year level. The FASTag collection is also at the highest level on a single day basis. And all this are indicating that economy slowly but steadily is turning to green. If you go to next slide, you will see what was the red portion has now become decisively green. What was amber portion has become decisively blue. Overall, there is positivity across every single sector in economy. This is best captured by Nomura India Business Resumption Index. From the 40s, it moved steadily to 60s, then to 70s, then to 80s, and now it is almost at 90 plus level. This is best illustrated in GST collection. For 3 months in a row, we have more than 1 lakh crore in GST collection. Last month's collection was highest at 1,15,000 crore. More importantly, future looks bright. The PMI for manufacturing as well as services continues to remain above 50. Real estate is going to support economy significantly as affordability increases, as housing prices have come down, interest rates have come down, and housing, which was once 15% of GDP, today is roughly 5% of GDP. There is pent-up demand of years which is coming out, and we believe housing will be one of the big driver for economy to recover with low interest rates and high affordability. Government has also launched production linked incentive scheme, PLI. This is across mobile phones, automobiles, pharma, battery, food products, textiles, telecom. Our feeling is that over a period of time, these schemes will add significantly to the GDP. Between construction, housing, and PLI supported sectors, Indian economy has potential to go into high single digit or low double digit growth levels. On the agriculture side, Rabi season sowing has been good. Water reservoir levels are higher than above average, and forecast for next year's this season's Rabi crop remains strong. Most importantly, in the first half, despite a lot of clamor, government didn't spend money. On a year-on-year basis, there was a shortfall in first 6 months of this year vis-a-vis previous year. But in second half, as GST recovers, as income tax recovers, as tax collection increases, hopefully government will be spending more compared to previous year, which will again support growth. The best news for India comes from the COVID-19 cases. We have seen decline in COVID-19 active cases from about 10 lakh to now 2 lakh 20,000, 2 lakh 30,000 active cases. We have fallen below top 10 countries in active cases after a period of time. And as long as we remain cautious and as long as COVID-19 active cases continue to remain under control, we have a solid opportunity on the economy side. There is reason to be optimistic about economy and COVID-19. 2 vaccines have been given emergency approval. Serum Institute produced COVID Shield and Bharat Biotech's Covaxin. Both these vaccines will be mass produced for vaccinating our country against coronavirus. And as we speak, in few days, this should begin. The market is also looking at budget with positivity. Finance Minister herself has mentioned that FY22 budget will be made in a manner never seen in 100 years in India. Let's hope and pray that Finance Minister delivers on her promise. Are there signs of worries? There are a couple of signs of worries. Unemployment has remained stubbornly high. It has fallen significantly from peak COVID period, but at 9.3%, unemployment continues to remain little bit on the higher side. Anecdotally, that is reflected, next slide please. Anecdotally, that is reflected into higher demand under Manrega. During the peak COVID time, obviously there was large unemployment and hence peak Manrega, but at 29 million demand, it is still little higher than the pre-COVID period. The bigger challenge from a financial point of view is credit growth. Growth in economy cannot be created without credit growth, and credit growth has remained subdued. If we take out credit disbursed under credit guarantee schemes given by the government, then virtually there is no credit growth in economy. Coming to the markets, FPIs have been big buyers of Indian equity. Out of all the emerging markets, major emerging markets, only China, India, and Russia has received positive flows. After selling 60,000 crore in March, FPIs have bought in November as well as December more than 60,000 crore. Clearly, FPIs continue to remain bullish on India, and they have been demonstrating that by putting their money into our market. This has resulted into FPI ownership going up. After dipping to 19% of India's ownership, it has crossed 20%, and it's well on its way to cross previous high of just about 20.5%. Our feeling is that in 2021 calendar year, fund flow from global investors will continue to remain bullish. This is the expected flow into equity market all over the world, and clearly what happens in the rest of the world is likely to happen in our market as well. With dollar depreciating and with developed markets seeing all kinds of trouble, including second wave of infection, including transition of political power in America, I think in 2021, people will prefer emerging market. Investors will prefer emerging market like India. Bank of America came out with a survey of their global investors, and they found that the emerging market equities continues to remain one of the most preferred asset classes. The flows from FPI and retail investors pulled Indian market up. The sentiments improved with monthly improving economic activity and highest ever GST collection, highest ever power consumption. But the most important thing which changed market is the profitability, is the corporate result. Let's look at the numbers. In June 20, Nifty 50 companies profit came at roughly about 46,000 crore. For September, expectation was that the profit will be roughly 75,000 crore. Actual numbers came at 1,10,000 crore. At 46,000 crore, if you annualize with some amount of growth, the expected Nifty profit was about 3 lakh crore, and the P ratio in the month of June was roughly about 33-34. Now, when September quarter results are annualized, the collective year's profitability moves to 4,40,000 crore. The 33P straightway falls to below 25. This sharp jump in profitability is the reason why markets have turned bullish. If companies maintain the kind of profitability they have maintained in September 20 quarter, one can reasonably assume that Indian markets at this fair value will continue to move up. Next slide, please. By virtue of that superlative September quarterly results, now Nifty EPS has started seeing upgrades. This is coming after 23 quarters of downgrade. Earnings growth are likely to rebound strongly. FY21, which was earlier expected to be negative earnings growth, now is expected to be about 2% earnings growth. But FY22 and FY22 estimate is roughly 38%. This is one of the highest earnings growth comparable to year 2011. If we look at Nifty's valuation, compared to its historical average, it is slightly higher, but compared to where other emerging markets are trading, it is in line with its averages. If we look at large cap, mid cap, small cap, now when we prepared this slide, mid cap was at a discount to its Jan 2018 price by 3.9%. But as we speak, it has already crossed Jan 18 level. Nifty 50 is significantly higher than Jan 18 level. Only small cap continues to trade at a discount to its Jan 18 level. So effectively, mid cap and large cap are now at their all-time high level, and small cap continues to trade at a discount to its all-time high level. Clearly, there is polarization in market. Few stocks are leading this rally. Next slide, please. If we see performance across market capitalization, bearing few sectors like banks and media, every other sector has delivered positive return in calendar year 2020. Calendar year 2020, which witnessed such a bull run and a bear run together, has resulted in small and mid cap delivering better return than large cap. Mid cap is up 22%, small cap is up 21%, and large cap is up 15% between Jan 20 to December 20. This slide shows that corrections are part of market cycle. All throughout the history of BSE Sensex, markets keep on correcting 10% at regular intervals. So it's not that we are expecting in 2021 singular bull market. There will be correction, but as long as infection remains under control, as long as we are able to vaccinate our population and create normal economy, I think market will be supported. They will continue to move up. What's our call on equity at this point of time? Valuation wise, we say it is neutral weight. However, momentum is slightly positive right now. Now, neutral weight doesn't mean that you sell equity. It only means you book profit if you are overweight equity at this point of time. Despite giving all the positive news, why are we believing this is equal weight? Well, we are driven by valuation against historical average of about 75% market cap to GDP ratio. We are today trading at about 98%, and which is why we think this is time to be equal weight to equity. If you look at other ratios like price to earnings ratio, we are slightly at a premium to average, but as earnings upgrade come into place, this will get neutralized. On a price to book basis, we are just around historical average. Put all these things together, market cap to GDP, PE, and price to book, markets are at fair value, and hence our call, this is time to be equal weight equity, not overweight, not underweight. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. There are certain positive aspects of our distribution which we have to talk to our clients. In April 20, if you all remember, a lot of media articles and WhatsApp messages circulated asking people to redeem from debt fund. Problem was in one fund house, but they spread the message as if entire mutual fund industry is at risk. Problem was in credit risk fund of one fund house, but they spread the message as if you had to redeem from all debt funds. If you see the performance of credit risk fund, in the month of April, because of unexpected redemption, yes, those funds had to face redemption pressure and delivered negative return. But those investors who stayed back on the advice of distributor like yourself, today they are enjoying double-digit return from 12 to 15%. If you go by headlines, you will end up losing return. You will end up losing your money. If you go by your trusted distributor's advice, you will be able to make money. Nothing illustrates better than this slide. Next slide, please. If you look at asset allocation fund like Balance Advantage Fund, which can come handy to you for your equity allocation, on 17th of Jan at 12,352 Nifty, this fund came 39% in equity. With the hindsight, we could have lowered it to minimum 20%, but fair enough, directionally, it was a call that this fund is becoming underweight equity. On 24th March 20, at 7,800 bottom, this fund was 75% in equity. With the hindsight, we should have made it 80%, but fair enough, 75 was better than 39. And as we speak on 31st December, this fund is transiting into a neutral weight to underweight category. Because momentum is positive, we are still saying that this is equal weight, neutral weight market. There were lots of articles in media at that point of time saying that please stop your SIPs. SIP return over 5-year, 10-year are below fixed deposit return. And today the same media is saying that investors have stuck gold in SIPs. This slides show that yes, in the month of Jan, SIP returns were like a dream. Most of the SIPs delivered double-digit return with positive alpha. In the month of March, dream turned nightmare. Most of the SIPs started delivering negative return. But people who continued their SIP in the month of December are back to double-digit SIP return. This is the beauty of SIP. Please don't go by media. Go by your trusted distributor's advice that SIP should be continued, especially when markets are correcting, especially when valuations are in your favor. Move to the next slide, next slide, next slide. On the equity side, what is our call? Equal weight allocation to equity. Within that, people can look to shift from balanced fund to balanced advantage fund at this valuation, as fund manager himself or herself will take the call on allocation. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. The other fund which one should look at is Kotak Asset Allocator Fund. My colleague Devinder manages it very nicely. And if you see the return over 1, 3, 5, and since inception, this fund has delivered double-digit return. For all your retail customers, this is the ideal product. This fund will decide between debt and equity. It goes from 0 to 100% in equity based on valuation. Unlike Balanced Advantage Fund, which goes between 20 to 80, this fund, unlike Balanced Advantage Fund, has a debt taxation and not an equity taxation. But this fund has delivered double-digit return over last 1, 3, 5, and since inception. This is the fund most ideal for retail investors for whom you won't be able to do asset allocation. Next slide, please. People who have investments in debt products now need to look at higher yielding, albeit with higher risk product. And this is the fund, Kotak Debt Hybrid Fund, erstwhile known as MIP, which will fit very well into this. Again, this fund has delivered higher single digit, lower double digit return. Equity allocation is between 15 to 25%. And for all those investors who are looking at safety of debt and slightly higher return with some amount of risk, Kotak Debt Hybrid is the most opportune product. Next slide, please. If you look at lots of stories in media about alpha, our fund, Kotak Blue Chip, which is a large cap fund, it has by and large delivered alpha over benchmark index despite limitation of not investing beyond 10% in a stock, despite keeping cash to meet day-to-day redemption, and despite having impact cost while changing portfolio, which indexes do not reflect. So Kotak Blue Chip Fund, have a look at its performance. It has delivered better return than index. Over next couple of years, if one has to take a call, we think combination of financial services and IT could be a great opportunity. You can play this via Kotak Focused Fund, which had 43% weightage in IT and financial services as on 31st December. Or one can create a balance between Kotak Pioneer Fund, which is more technology heavy, and Kotak Banking ETF, which is basically ETF on banking stocks. Should we invest in gold, which is another asset class? If you look at gold supply slowly is deteriorating as all the easily extractable gold has already been extracted. Next slide, please. Over a period of time, gold discoveries are falling because no one is investing in development of newer mines. The gold price versus exploration budget, if you see, exploration cost is increasing and budget is falling. Miners capex has also come down, which means there is classical shortages of gold likely to happen if demand sustains. We believe in low interest rate environment and high liquidity scenario, gold prices will do well. Gold prices have jumped up significantly from $1,450 in March 2020. It briefly touched $2,000 also, but we still think gold has a longer opportunity. While investing in gold, please remember there is 12.5% import duty on gold in India. In case import duty drops to zero, in one single day, there will be 12.5% drop in gold ETF NAV. Subject to that risk, gold is an asset class which is worth owning. Today, a lot of investors are asking about active funds versus passive funds alpha generation. And this is global experience, which shows that alpha of active and passive fund continues to move in a cyclical basis. There are periods where funds deliver positive alpha. There are periods where they don't deliver positive alpha. But over a period of time, good fund managers will generate positive alpha. In India, returns are compared with total return index. Globally, total return index is compared with gross of expenses. In India, we calculate net of expenses. But if you look at index fund per se on Nifty as well as Sensex, they underperform their benchmark indices by about 1% across various time periods. So when people talk about alpha generation, they don't realize that even index funds don't produce alpha. There is transaction cost, there is liquidity cost, which index doesn't capture, but fund managers have to bear. This is the alpha of our SIPs. Undoubtedly, on a one-year basis, in many schemes, alpha is not being seen. But if you see the longer-term track record, all the funds have delivered reasonably good alpha over their indices. There are many people who assume that if they go directly into the market, they will be able to make more money. We are in the process of launching our fund of fund on NASDAQ 100. My colleague Shivani will be talking about it later in this call. This fund is opening on 11th of January for subscription, and it will close on 25th of January, one day ahead of Republic Day. We also invite you to join for the equity colloquium on 21st of January in English. This will be sector call on auto and auto ancillary. It will be presented by my two colleagues, Arjun and Devinder. We presented on two sectors before, financial services and IT services, and both were very well received. More than 7,000 people joined in those equity colloquium. It gives you very good understanding of the market, and hence I will recommend all of you to log into this equity colloquium on 21st of Jan at 4 p.m. Coming to the debt market, well, liquidity remains high, more than 600,000 crore, as FX flows have continued to come. Next slide, please. Inflation, while it has remained consistently higher than RBI's comfort zone, but the core inflation has been well within RBI's comfort zone. We believe inflation will come down in second half of FY21. In inflation, there are all kinds of data. You have wholesale price inflation, which is below RBI's comfort level of 2%. You have food articles, which has behave differently in wholesale price index as well as consumer price index. If you look at CPI index food inflation, it is 9.6%. If you look at food articles in WPI, it is roughly about 2.1%. Clearly, there are too many inflations, and we just hope and pray that RBI will focus on growth right now. We do expect that yield curve is very, very steep right now, and there are chances that this curve will become flat over a period of time. FPIs have been now buyers in debt market for last 4 months. They sold record amount in March, April and May, but now they have turned gradual buyers. If you look at 5-year spread of corporate bonds over corresponding government securities. If you look at 10-year spread, both look attractive at the 5 to 10-year segment. The state development loan spread is today trading at roughly about 84 basis point. The open market operations by RBI in SDL is positive for state development loans, and we believe these spreads will contract over a period of time. For long-term investors, investing roughly in 10-year segment around benchmark government securities or PSU bond looks attractive, as 10-year minus 1-year spread is higher at 250 basis point. Similarly, at the lower end of credit rating, AA minus, spreads are still above pre-COVID level, and we believe this can be best captured in Kotak Credit Risk Fund, Kotak Medium Term Plan, or Kotak Corporate Bond Fund. On the debt market, interest rates will move like a pendulum, and it will be better to invest in Kotak Dynamic Bond Fund kind of product, or into floating rate, medium term, and credit risk kind of product, which has higher carry but slightly higher risk. In terms of our debt products, clearly quality is paramount. Return of capital is more important than return on capital. Next slide, please. If you look at our portfolios compared to April, they have moved higher and higher towards better quality assets. Even in April, 93% of our portfolio was AAA rated assets and sovereign papers. Today, it is 94%. More importantly, in last 9 months, our debt AUM has grown from 78,000 crore to 1,22,000 crore. Most of our portfolios remain fairly liquid, including credit risk fund, and we believe we will be in a position to meet your customers' expectation of daily redemption across all our funds. On the debt side, funds to consider will be taking a one step ahead on duration. If your time horizon is to invest in liquid fund, you can look at short-term funds. If your time horizon is to invest into short-term funds, you can look at long duration fund. It's time to play on front foot in interest rates rather than on back foot. These funds have delivered higher single digit, lower double digit return after expenses. Yes, there is volatility and things go up and down, but even after providing for defaults like ILFS, funds have delivered higher single digit to lower double digit return. Kotak Dynamic Bond Fund continues to outperform over a longer period of time and is an ideal fund in today's environment where interest rates will move like a pendulum. Kotak Medium Term Fund can be suitable for those guys who want slightly higher amount of carry and is willing to take some amount of credit risk. Again, thank you for your attendance. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay invested. Now I will request Shibani to talk about NASDAQ 100. Shibani, go ahead. And
yeah. Hi, this is Ashish. I'll just spend some time, Nilesh, on the NASDAQ 100 presentation.
Perfect.
Yep. Hi, good evening, everyone. And my name is Ashish. Over the next few minutes, I'll just discuss our thoughts and the highlights on the NASDAQ 100. So, when we mention NASDAQ, what springs to mind really is the disruptive and innovative companies which, at a very high scale, have been shaping and changing our behaviors both in our day to day lives and at our workplaces. And the kinds of companies that have been doing this and are a major constituents of the index are the likes of Apple, Google, Netflix, Amazon, and Microsoft. And then in the more recent years, also the likes of Zoom and Tesla. So when we talk about these companies, it is not a surprise that the index, which comprises heavily of such names, has had a disproportionately better return as compared to its counterparts, whether in the US, like the S&P 500, or in India, like the Nifty 50 or the Nifty 500. And when we look at it as an Indian investor, the returns get a further sheen added to it because of the rupee denominated nature of these returns, where we also had benefited or would have benefited from the depreciation of the rupee versus the dollar over the last 10 years. Now, while there can be volatilities in the short term, and from an Indian investor standpoint, the volatilities can also get compounded by movements in currency. But when we look at it over the medium to long term, the returns of the NASDAQ 100 end up being superior across time zones, whether it is 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, or even over a decade, as we saw in the previous slide. What adds to the investment attractiveness of the index is that while the returns on a standalone absolute basis have been superior, for that higher returns, one has not necessarily assumed a higher proportion of risk. As we see, the measure of risk reflected in standard deviation has been more or less comparable to their counterpart indices where the returns had been lower. So to put it in another words, the index has returned higher with a lower risk, or the risk adjusted returns profile of NASDAQ has been even better than the standalone profile. Now, NASDAQ is increasingly perceived to be a largely technology index, and it is understandable where that thought comes from, because when we look at the constituents contributing to the index, almost 30% plus contribution comes from the top three companies alone, which are Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon. However, there are constituents from sectors such as utilities, consumer staples, healthcare, and consumer discretionary as well. And all of these non-IT companies actually contribute 52% to the index, whereas information technology is the single largest dominant weight with 48%. So which are these companies which are apart from the non-IT sectors? Well, these are some of the household long-haul stable names like PepsiCo, T-Mobile, Starbucks, Mondelez, and Marriott International, and also some of the healthcare companies such as Gilead Sciences and Moderna, two names which were leading the race for coronavirus vaccine a few months back, as we may recollect. Another important aspect in terms of a key differentiation of the index versus someone like a Nifty 50 is that the NASDAQ 100 does not have any constituent from financials. And when we compare that to the Nifty 50, the financial skew is fairly on the higher side with almost 39% weightage over there. Now, given that technology is a dominant contributor to the index, how have the fundamentals of technology in the US ecosystem context panned out over the last few decades? When we look at the contribution of technology companies to the S&P 500 in the last 30 years, their revenue share has grown almost threefold, from 5% to more than 16%. More importantly, the share of earnings has expanded by almost 6x during this period, from 5% to close to 30% at this point of time. Now, not only has the revenue growth and the contribution been far superior, this has also come along with a significant expansion in their operating profits. Over the last decade and a half, the profitability of the tech companies has been increasing gradually and currently is north of 20%. And when we look at the mix of non-tech companies during this entire period, they have remained at a fairly narrow band of just about double digits operating margins. And this has not been just about the P&L. In fact, the conversion of these revenues and profits to the free cash flow has also been just as strong. When we view the conversion of sales to free cash flow of the tech companies, that has been almost 2x of that of the non-tech companies during this period. And hence the cash generation has just been as healthy as the profitability and revenues. So the growth has been good. The quality of that revenue has also been superior. But what about the forecast of the growth going forward? Now, enough has been spoken ever since the pandemic struck about the importance of digitization in corporates and how digital transformation is the key for every business. So we will not delve a lot into it, but we will just summarize this growth runway opportunity through 3 trends that were highlighted by McKinsey in their survey. And this is the first trend, which is that the amount of customer interactions that now operate on a digital platform have gone up to almost 3x in the last 2 years, from 20% to 58%. And this actually has accelerated this transformation of digital interactions by 3 years. In other words, we would have expected to get to the 58% mark 3 years later had it not been for the pandemic. And when the customers are engaging digitally, every business has questions around how to provide the infrastructure, how to provide seamless experiences, and how to use the plethora of data that they now have with digital interactions. And the answers to each of these questions eventually lies in the usage of technology. And those answers are substantiated by this trend number 2. What we see is that across companies, the percentage of digitization in any product or service has actually catapulted to 55%, which is double of what it was 2 years ago. Now, this may vary from sector to sector. A digitized product offering may be much higher today in a financial services company or a health services company as compared to a consumer and packaged goods company. But what is more important to note is that the acceleration of these digitized products and services has been as high as 7 years. So, but for COVID, we would not have gotten here for the next 7 years, but we are already there. How did the companies get this high this soon? There have been a lot of temporary solutions that technology companies have helped them with to get there in the interim to answer the questions posed by the pandemic. So what happens once the pandemic is behind? Do we revert to the normal ways of operating? And that is answered by the third trend of the survey. The very same large corporates have highlighted that the biggest changes that have taken place in their functioning in the COVID environment are the ones which are most likely to stick as well. The likes of remote working and working from home, changing customer expectations, increasing migration of their assets to cloud. These are all where they see the trends that will continue to play out even going forward over the next few years. So some of those temporary solutions are set to become more permanent, and hence the growth and opportunity for technology companies remains. So now these companies have good financial quality, they have a good runway for growth. The final question that beckons is, will that growth be reflected in the constituent index such as a NASDAQ 100? And to answer that, we look at one dimension, which is what have been the kinds of companies that have been introduced into this index over the last 10 years. Now, the companies listed here are just a small sample or a fraction of the total number of companies that got introduced. But what we would like to highlight is that the names such as Google, Netflix, Tesla, Zoom, these lend a lot of encouragement that any such new company which is disruptive at such a high scale and growing at a very high rate will find its way into the index. And unless their counterparts in India and the US can give as many options of such disruptive companies, and that too at such a high frequency as the US does, it is unlikely that other indices may grow faster and the NASDAQ 100 growth can continue to remain fairly steadfast. And what we also look at is the consensus expectations of earnings growth over the next 3 years for NASDAQ 100 is far higher than any of their competing indices. Even over the last 10-year period, the growth rate on earnings had been fairly healthy. What we see is that the Nifty IT has grown at a slightly higher rate than the Nasdaq 100. But one must remember that the IT index also benefited significantly from the depreciating rupee over the 10-year period. And if we look at the Nasdaq 100 earnings growth in a rupee denominated fashion, then on a like-to-like comparison, that earnings growth will be far higher there as well. And because of these very factors, it is not surprising that the weights of technology stocks in the market during these last 3 decades have shot up from 5% to close to 40% as on December 2020. And also, given the runway that exists and the way the future is shaping up, these weights can continue to increase going forward as well, in our view. Hence, we believe that there is a case for the strong and premium valuations of the Nasdaq 100 to remain. As we witnessed, the 1-year forward PE for Nasdaq 100 currently is almost 33 times, much higher than something like a Nifty 50, which we saw in Nilesh's presentation, is currently at 22x. Now, apart from there being a case for strong standalone gains from Nasdaq 100, there is also a 3-pronged diversification for any investor that is facilitated if someone has an exposure to stocks or constituents of the Nasdaq and at the same time to a counterpart like a Nifty 50, for example. The correlation of Nasdaq 100's returns to Nifty 50 or Nifty 500 has been very low at just around 0.2, which is a true test of diversification. The second element is a hedge against a potentially weak domestic economy. And if the market returns for any reason are lower in the domestic arena due to the weak economy, generally what we observe is that that trend also gets accompanied by the weakening of the rupee vis-a-vis the dollar. And that weakening rupee implies higher rupee denominated returns from the Nasdaq 100, which in that sense offers an additional hedge apart from the lower correlation. And lastly, this diversification is via exposure to new age businesses that will more likely be on the side of disrupting rather than being on the side of getting disrupted. And hence their growth runway will have a much longer period of time and longevity. And these would be the companies which would get valued disproportionately higher than their traditional model peers. And one good example that we would just like to end with is the automobile sector, where we see Tesla and their automobile counterparts. While Tesla produces just a fraction and sells just a fraction of the cars that are sold by their peers, when we look at the market cap of Tesla, given its perception as a new age disrupting organization, it is higher than even the cumulative market weights of their peers, despite selling only the fraction of their units. So that is the reason why we believe that it has a strong proposition and is on a strong footing, and which is what we had to share with you today. So thank you so much, and I would like to hand over the proceedings back.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.